Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, July the 31st, 2021. It is currently 12:44 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. Now, I have a very important question. I want you to really think about this. What were you doing on this day in 1981? Where were you? Where were you living on this day in 1981? And did you realize that whatever you were doing on that day, did you realize that you were just hours away from literally the world changing as you knew it? You knew the world. You understood the world. I don't know how old you were on this day in 1981. If I remember correctly, I was 13 years of age. I'm really bad at math, so I can't figure it out right now. I believe I was 13 years old. I think I was 13 years old on this day in 1981. I was thinking about it a little while ago. I was just kind of pacing and just thinking about this. And because there's this subject that we're going to be talking about, I have spent literally countless hours this week just talking about it, and I'm just going to share a lot of those thoughts, not in any organized way. It's going to be very stream of consciousness, just sharing my thoughts, my feelings. This may not mean anything to you, but this means a lot to me. So I was just thinking about this a little while ago. I was asking myself, I wonder where I can almost guarantee, I'd do a little bit of thinking on it, but if I remember correctly, I was living in Buffalo Gap, Texas, 13 years of age. I don't know what I wish I could know. I really wish I could know what I was doing like right now at this time, 40 years ago today, right? 1981. What was I doing on July the 31st, 1981 at 12:46 p.m.? It would be, I wish I could just go back and see what I was doing, where I was, was I listening to music? Was I outside? Where was I at? But I can't remember exactly what I was doing on this day in 1981. I think I can probably drive by the house right now that I lived in back then in Buffalo Gap, Texas in 1981. But where were you? What were you doing? That's 40 years ago, right? That I don't know if you can even remember, but whatever you were doing at this time, most likely when the world changed, you were probably sound asleep. Because on this day, now literally it was the day had just changed, but on August the 1st, 1981, at midnight, this happened. Listen carefully.
7, 6, 5, 4. We've gone for main engine start. We have main engine start.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll. And then you hear the guitar riff. Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll. That was the launch of MTV on August the 1st, 1981 at midnight. And at that moment, the world changed. Now, it took a little while for everyone to understand it, but the world literally changed at that moment. Pop culture was going to change. Music was going to change. How people discovered music. The music industry was going to change. How we consumed music. Everything was about to change, and it changed dramatically. And if you were alive at that point in time, I don't know when you finally caught on, but at some point, because it was so different back then, right? Because in 1981, it's not like I was sitting there, could be looking on social media going, hey, tonight at midnight, this new channel called MTV is going to launch. That was the launch of MTV. All right. Do I even have to explain what MTV was? I guess maybe there's some younger people. MTV was a music television channel. There had never been anything like that we were aware of. There were some programs that had played music videos In the UK, I think there was a program maybe in the United States that had played, but it was, no one really understood what music videos were. And this was a music video channel that launched, again, August the 1st, midnight, 1981. And the world was going to change forever. But I just want to make sure, if we go back to July the 31st, I want to make sure you understand this because I think it's so important. If you go back to July the 31st, 1981, 12:49 p.m., all right? Wherever I was, I couldn't have been sitting there looking on social media, everyone saying, hey, okay, it's this many hours to the launch of this new channel. I would have had no clue that it was even happening, right? It was going to launch live in New Jersey. A lot of people who claim that they were watching live the night MTV went live, those are false memories or they're just right out lying, because unless you lived in New Jersey, you did not see it. That's it. You couldn't even see it in New York City. You couldn't even see it in New York City. In fact, the original VJs, the original, basically call them DJs, but they were there to play videos, which these people became like literally like your family. We'll talk about that in a minute. They literally had to get on a school bus and go to a restaurant in New Jersey to watch the launch because there was basically no cable system carrying it in New York City. So literally wherever you lived, most likely, even if you were awake at midnight, you had no clue what was going on. You probably didn't even know the channel was going live. You probably didn't even know what it was until much, much later. But that just shows you the different way the world was. You didn't have access to information. You didn't know everything that was going on. You were just living your life. In many cases, can we say this? A blissful ignorance. You didn't really know. Now, in some ways, a unfortunate ignorance, because I would have cut off my right arm to be able to be there on August the 1st, 1981, to watch what was going to become absolutely one of the most. I can't even tell you how important it was to me in my life, how significant it was, but we'll get to that in a minute. But where were you, and when did you first hear about MTV? When did you first see it? Do you remember that initial reaction when your eyes first watched it? And it was like, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, whoa. Like one song after another song? And I absolutely loved the VJs, whether it was Mark Goodman, Martha Quinn, Alan Hunter, all of them, Nia Blackwood. I can go through all of their names. All of JJ, I can't remember his last name. I can go through the original VJs, and those original VJs. That was one of my favorite parts of MTV. Was not just the music. I loved then after, between the videos, they would come on and they would give you music news. They would tell you, oh, this album just entered the charts at number 16, and here this band is currently on tour, and here's where they'll be. Those people became like my best friends in the world. I literally loved, you don't even understand my relationship with MTV. Look, I may not fit in school. I may not get along with my life may have been falling apart as far as my family was concerned, but MTV was that one constant and one consistent, turning on, discovering music and discovering bands. And like every time I watched MTV, it felt like I was an explorer, cutting through the jungle, and I cut through these trees, and I step out into a clearing, and I just discover something brand new. And it felt like nobody else knows about this. Nobody else knows about it. It's just me, my room, midnight, or whatever time it was. I was always watching MTV late at night. Nobody else knows. Nobody else knows. I've discovered something. I've discovered a treasure. It just felt like very personal, very unique. And of course, it went on to literally change everything. And little small towns where MTV was on the cable system, record stores would report that, like, all these kids would be coming in going, hey, we're trying to find this record. And it'd be like, wait, what record? Like, where did you hear about this? On MTV. And then the record stores realized we better pay attention to what's going on MTV, because that's the records. People were buying the records based off what they saw on MTV. They were discovering, and again, a lot of the music from the UK was coming over. I mean, it was just, I can't even explain to you. It was like this brave new world. It was amazing. It was the most, it was so awesome. It was so great. It was an amazing time to be alive, and it was an amazing time to witness this. Now, I'm not one. I don't like nostalgia. I hate it. I hate to say, well, those were the good old days. I hate that. I like to move forward. And if you know anything about my music listening habits, 80% of my music listening is always brand new. When music's, for me, it's just as exciting to me in 2021. It's different, but it's just as exciting to be sitting there at 10:59 p.m. on a Thursday night, because at 11 p.m. Central for me, in the Central time zone, at 11 p.m. on Thursday nights, all of the streaming services get all the new music. And I start going through, a new album. I don't care the genre. And I can sit there and listen to all and explore and analyze. That to me is just as exciting. And I can't believe I live in a time where I'd be standing in front of the record store on the day new music came out, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, whenever they would open, they would walk in. Now, it was cool because I was always there on New Music Day. I'd save up my money and be able to go. I would go in and buy one album that I knew, and then I would search for some band I'd never heard of, didn't know anything about, and buy that because I wanted to discover new music. But in many cases, they would let me tear open the box and pull out the LPs, pull out the CDs. I love that smell. I was like, I loved it. I love being at the record store. But you know what? I was limited in what I could buy. I could see it all, but I couldn't buy it. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't listen to it. Now, I can stay up all night and listen to every new release. Some I love, some I hate, some I think are appropriate, some I think are inappropriate, whatever the case may be. I don't want this to feel like that I've just wished for the good old days, but it was an amazing time to be alive. Cable TV was brand new. Obviously, when you look at some of the news articles trying to describe MTV later on, when it started catching on and news articles had to start writing about it, they didn't even really have a word for music video. They were just like, they play the song and it's accompanied by visual images. I think that's how one article tried to describe MTV. They play music and it's accompanied by visual images. What in the world does that mean? Okay, so you had to see it. And once you saw it, I can't speak for adults. Once you saw it as a kid, I was like, this is the greatest thing in the history of the world. I was like, if I die now, it doesn't matter. Life is complete. I saw whatever this is. And I struggle to figure out the first time I actually saw it because where I lived, it took a while for cable TV to show up. So I know that my main watching it was when I went to Abilene for either family, friends, wherever they had MTV on, that's where I would watch it. And it was, I was so fascinated and blown away by it. It's hard to even comprehend what it became. It became like this. I mean, if you were a teenager in the 1980s, maybe if you were raised in a religious home, your access to MTV was forbidden, and your parents were like, no, that's ungodly, because there was a lot of Christian condemnation of MTV because obviously they pushed the envelope, and we could get into, all of that. But unless you were prohibited from it, I don't know how you weren't, I don't know how you could. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there were young people like, okay, MTV, music videos, whatever. Maybe some of us was like, no, it was like the world had just, I can't even explain what it was like. There's no words for it. And so I lived with it. And then slowly but surely, by the time you get so from 1981, 1989, I think it's 1989, maybe 1990, 89 or 90 is when they release their first reality TV show called The Real World. I think The Real World was the first major one that they released, and I think it was 89 or 90. There was a couple of other things that they had offered in, like in 1988, but you started getting the sense that the MTV of old was changing, and part of the reason kids grew up. Right? And now look, we know this. This is just statistically true. It makes me sad to have to report this, but it's true. When people are like 13 to like 18, 19, 20, 21, music. They may call themselves a music fan. They may talk about music. They may love music. And then when they get into around 23, 24, I think it's been identified around 25. That's when everything changes. They stop listening to music. If they do listen to music, they stop listening to anything new. It's like their brain just says, that's it. You can't listen. Everything new is garbage. You can only listen to the music of the past, and you don't even really listen to the music of the past. I mean, you turn it on, and you just complain about the music of the current music. So guess what? If you're 13 in 1981, all right, by the time you get to 1989, that audience is starting to grow. That audience is getting older and older. And as they start getting older and older, well, they move on to other things. And then you have these younger kids coming up who don't really appreciate MTV. They take it for granted. Okay, yeah, that's that video channel. They're younger, but they don't feel it the same way. So then they get tired and they start looking for something else. And then MTV had to evolve and change. And now it's what it is now. It's just basically reality TV. It's kind of it's sad from my perspective because it's called MTV. The M used to stand for music. Now it doesn't. But they had to move on. They had to adapt. They had to evolve because the audience who loved MTV, well, they all grew up, and that's the way it's sad. That's the way it happens. That's the way it did. Now kids, if they want to watch music videos, they go to YouTube, and everyone always like, well, we don't need MTV anymore. We have YouTube. And whenever I hear that, it makes me just want to scream because I'm like, you don't get it. Yes, you can go to YouTube and look up any video you want to see. The goal with MTV was not you being able to pick what you wanted to see, was you discovering something you may have never even considered listening to. That was the whole thing with MTV. It was music discovery. I'm sitting there like, wait a minute. Who's this? Who's this? Wait, what's this? Okay, right. And you would have a little notebook. You would write it down. You'd write it down. Okay, all right. Duran Duran. Okay, Pet Shop Boys, Human League, Adam Ant. I can just go on and on and on and on and on and on. All the Pat Benatar. She was video number 2. The Buggles with the video killed the radio star. I can go on and on and on. The Who. Well, the Who was already well known before that time. Rod Stewart was played 15 times in the first day. 38 Special. That was a band I'd probably never heard of before MTV. I can go on and on and on. And you would write them down, and then you would go to the record store and you'd look for it and go, oh, okay, that I saw that on MTV. I saw that on MTV. It was about not getting what you wanted. It was about getting what you didn't even know you wanted. Now it's we're very picky. I'm not, remember back when early in cable and you had the movie channel or HBO, and you sat there and waited till the next movie came on, right? You didn't get to pick the movie. They picked the movie. Right? And in many cases, you end up watching a movie that you probably never would have watched. Right? That's the difference. Now we look and go, I don't want that. I don't like that. I don't want that. So you never discover anything new. You can't grow because you only choose what you want. One of the ways my musical taste basically includes everything of every genre, is I accredit that with MTV. MTV back then, especially early on, they were playing things like the Charlie Daniels Band was early on, and Charlie Daniels Band on MTV. I mean, can you even think about that? That seems so counterintuitive. That seems so countercultural. Charlie Daniels Band on MTV? What in the world? Right there next to Adam Ant, Human League. I mean, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? It's so different, but that was the beauty of it, is you were being exposed to so many different things, therefore broadening your taste, broadening your horizons, being exposed to different cultures, being exposed to different things. That was the beauty. That was the beauty of it. And as and every year when the anniversary of MTV comes along, I go through a period of self-reflection, depression. It makes you realize a couple of things. And here's just some philosophical thoughts. And I know I could have organized this better, but I just want to share. That's all I want to do. I just want to share. And maybe you can relate to it. Maybe you're not. Maybe you find it interesting. Maybe you do not. It makes me realize, or sometimes it makes me angry. It makes me frustrated, but I know there's only so much I can do. When I look back And I've watched, I don't know how many hours of MTV I've watched this week of old MTV, of VHS tapes, anything I could get my hands on of old MTV. When I'm sitting there watching it, it made me realize, it almost makes me sad, it makes me depressed, makes me frustrated that why didn't I make, I question myself, did I make the most of what I had then, right? Like it was there. Did I waste opportunities when I could have been watching MTV and I was doing other things that now I don't even remember? Did I waste my time? Did I really make the most of that time, or did I let it slip through my fingers like sand? And you know what? That's an important philosophical question because we always do that. How much you look back in your life, there were certain things you did not take advantage of it. It was gone. Now, yes, there are things far more important than MTV. There are things far more important, but it's a lesson. Look, I can't go back and make the most of 1982, 1983 when I first stumbled upon MTV and changed my life. I couldn't have been there on the night of August the 1st, 1981, or the morning of August the 1st, 1981, because I didn't live in New Jersey, okay? So I couldn't have been there. I couldn't have seen it. So, but when it finally was there, did I make the most of it? Well, you know what? I can't go back and fix that. I can't go back and check. I can't even go back and answer that question. But I know this, I don't want to waste 1 second of now. I don't want to waste a second of now. And whatever it may be, I don't want to waste it because I don't want to waste a second of life because it's, again, like sand. You pick up sand in your hand and it just slides right through your fingers. Or water, you put water in your hand. It just that's how life is. And so if you don't grab onto it and make the most of every second, then 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, you're going to look back and it's going to be all gone. It's going to be gone. And every second you get 1 second closer to death. You get 1 second closer to the end of your life. And you've got to make the most of what you have right now. MTV reminds me that there was a time it was there and it's gone. And sometimes we don't take advantage of it. We don't make the most of what we have in the present, right? So please make the most of what we have in the present, because if you don't, it's going to be gone. Number two, I also realized the futility of living in the past. The MTV anniversary. Look, I got no problem reflecting on it. Like I said, this week I've watched a lot of MTV, hours and hours. I don't even know how many hours I've watched MTV, and some things reflecting the past. But you know what I realized is, yes, it's cool to do it for a very brief period of time. But you know what? It's gone. It's no going back to it. There's never going to be another MTV. The times are different. People are different. It was a one-time thing. And I can look back, and then what I was doing something. I was watching MTV, and then I got up because I kept stopping and kind of just walking around talking to myself about time and life and analyzing and philosophy. And I stopped and I realized, you know what? While I'm sitting here watching MTV, now this may not matter to you, Apple Music has three, in some ways Apple Music, for their streaming service, one of their key elements of Apple Music was to bring back radio for music discovery. Because if I turn on an Apple Music radio station, I have to listen to what they play, and it may not be something I choose, so that leads to music discovery. So I was sitting there watching MTV, and I'm like, you know what? While I'm sitting here trying to reflect on the past, I'm missing out on what's in the present. It's complete futility to keep looking backwards. Look at the present. Look at the present. Don't ignore the things in the present. You got to make the most of the time you have. We learn that, but you can't spend your time in the present looking back at what you missed. You got to make the most of what you have. So there's a futility in living in the past. There's a futility in reminiscing. There's a futility. I can't stand when people get together. And I know it's so common to do, but everyone wants to talk about back in the day, I did this, we always want to talk about what we did in the past, right? A lot of times people want to get together and all they can do is tell stories about what they did in high school. It's over. High school's over. It's done. So there's a futility of living in the past as well. And I don't know if you could hear my stomach is growling because I'm starving, but okay. So I apologize for that. I can't control that. Okay. My stomach is saying, you need food. Stop talking. All right. So you got to make the most of the time you have. And there's a futility, a complete futility and living in the past. And I think number 3, I'm sitting here. I'm how many miles away from where I was in 1981 on this day? Let's see, Buffalo Gap is what, 6 miles from here? Well, no, probably about 8 miles from here, 9 miles from where I currently am sitting. I'm about 9 miles from where I was on this day in 1981. You know what it makes you remember and realize? How brief this life really is. 40 years. It feels like that. Feels like that. Gone. 40 years. Now, that 40 years contained a lot of good, a lot of bad, pain, suffering, difficulty, people dying, major, and a lot of wonderful things as well. It's been filled with good, bad, tragedy, victory, success. It's made up of so much. Those 40 years is made up of so much, but it's just gone. And it makes you realize how brief life is. It's here for a moment and it's gone. And sometimes you need a reminder. And maybe for me, maybe for you, the anniversary of MTV doesn't mean anything to you. It's irrelevant to you. But for me, it hits me like I can't even explain it. Because music is such a major part of my life. And so MTV was such a major part of my life. It probably was more so than you can understand. So 40 years gone, it's just, man, it's like, if I could get in my car and drive past that house in Buffalo Gap and see the 13-year-old me, I was oblivious to what was coming, what was about to happen, not only in my future, but on that particular day at midnight. I would want to say, go back to my original point. Make the most of that. Make the most of every second you have. Make the most of every second you have, and don't spend one second in the present getting caught and remembering the past, because you got to stay focused. And then I would want to say, hey, it's going to be gone before you know it. It's going to be, you're 13 now, buddy, but before you know it, it's going to be 40 years later, and you're going to be sitting in a church about 8 miles from here, sitting in front of a microphone, talking about it. And by talking about it, am I not doing what I've already said? I'm reflecting too much on the past. I can't, but I'm reflecting on the past temporarily to remind me that I've got to make the most of what I have right now. I got to make the most of what I have. Every time I pull into this, every time I turn on this microphone, or even before that, when I come driving down the road towards the church, I always start thinking, 10 years from now, I'm going to remember. Remember when you were doing the Theology Central podcast? Remember it. I've got to make the most of this moment now. That's why I try to record so many episodes. Look, before I know it, it's over. No more sermons are going to be preached. No more podcasts are going to be made. I'm going to either be dead, or everyone who's listening to me is going to move on. I'm going to slide even deeper into irrelevancy than I already am, and it's not going to matter anymore, and I'm going to move on to something else. And I'm going to remember these days of sitting in this building. I'm going to remember these days of being a pastor of this church. I'm going to remember these days of talking into this microphone. But it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. Just like MTV is now a thing of the past. 40 years. Just, it in some ways, it feels like it was just, I close my eyes and it's like, I remember being there watching MTV. Oh, I remember that video. I can literally probably tell you probably every video that I've ever seen on MTV. You play a song, I'm like, oh, I remember that video. Oh, I remember that video. I remember that video. I remember that video. Okay, that part of the song, this is what's happening in that video, because it was such a part of but it's all gone. 40 years, just no more. No more. And, on that day in 1981, now this gets a little emotional. You know what? I did not realize I was 13. 13 1981. I don't know what I was doing on this day in July 31st, but you know who was inside my house on that day? Was my mother. I did not realize that it wouldn't be long. It would be just a few years, and my mother would be dead. Had no way of knowing that. If I could have known that, maybe I could have made things better. Maybe I could have said more things to her. Maybe I could have talked to her more. My father, who was in that house, is dead now. You know, you in some ways you wish you could go back and say, hey, you're going to make some big mistakes in your life. Here are the top 5. They're going to be really big. You're going to embarrass yourself. These are the. But in some ways, I don't. Maybe making those mistakes, not excusing any sin, but that's just that maybe that was part of the life that I was supposed to have. Who knows? We got to get into all kinds of philosophical discussions. But yeah, I guess the anniversary of MTV makes me realize that you got to make the most of what you have. Like whatever it is that you love, whatever you got to make the most of it. It's going to be gone. There's a futility and a bad thing about being preoccupied with the past. You can't keep looking back. You got to look forward. And I think that's very important because if you do that, it's a problem. And number 3, you just got to realize how fast it goes. You just got to understand how brief life is. You got to understand the brevity of life. 40 years, I don't know, maybe it seems like a long time to you. Maybe there's certain situations that make us realize how quick it was. But man, MTV was there, and then what it was no more. What it was no more. There were so many things like that. So just a reflection on 40-year anniversary of MTV. You can find the first 2 hours of MTV. There's videos all over YouTube of it. I think it's archive.org. You can watch countless hours of MTV if you have a mobile device and if your TV can. You can send the signal over to your TV and you can watch it on your TV. It's not the best picture quality because obviously archive.org took the footage from VHS tapes that people had made of MTV. There's people out there who have hundreds of VHS tapes of hours of MTV because a lot of people recorded it and they kept them. But you can go back and watch some of it, and maybe you don't care, or maybe you're just curious. Like, what was this MTV thing? Maybe you'll want to go back and look at it. But 40 years ago, at midnight tonight, or midnight tomorrow morning, I guess the way you should state it, and less than 12 hours from now is the 40-year anniversary of the launch of the rocket. Like that, they showed NASA footage. You heard that. And then that voice saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll." And then you had the first video, which was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. And then the next couple of segments are all messed up because it's supposed to be Mark Goodman, but it starts with Alan Hunter. And then all the VJs introduce themselves. Then it goes to Mark Goodman, which was actually supposed to be first, but they had all kinds of technical glitches there at the beginning. But it's... you can go back and relive that if you want. If you don't, can't even relive it because none of us, 99% of the people probably, I would be curious to know how many people were actually watching at midnight on August the 1st. A lot of people claim, I've met so many people claim, yeah, I was watching it live. No, and you lived, no, you weren't. You were not watching it live. We all want to claim we were. Now, to be fair, MTV replayed those first 2 hours multiple times later. So I think a lot of times people may have saw the replay and in their minds, they're confusing it. But no, we did. I wish I could claim it. I really do. I wish I could claim I was watching it live, but not that it really matters to anybody else. But it wouldn't even be about so that I could claim it. It would be like because I could have lived it. I can't even imagine what it must have been like living in New Jersey and being there at midnight and, watching it. It would have been like, how many times do you get to watch live when a television channel goes live? It's not a lot. There's a couple of times I have, but it wasn't anything as historic as the launching of MTV. But all right, there you have it. Just some thoughts and reflections on 40 years ago today. I don't know where you were. I was a teenager, a couple of miles from here. I have no idea what I was doing on this day. I really don't. I wish I could know. I wish I could know what I was doing. But I know this. No one on radio was talking about, hey, tonight they're launching this new music video channel. Nobody was talking about it on radio because I guarantee I would have been listening to radio on this day in 1981. I guarantee you that. You know what? I was probably listening to, well, I don't know what, I'd have to see what day of the week it was. That would be interesting. I have to know what day of the week it was. If it was a Saturday, then I would have been probably listening to Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown, since that was like religion in our family. But yeah, I'd have to know what day of the week was it, July 31st, 1981, because that may tell me, that wouldn't tell me, I mean, it could tell me what I was possibly listening to. Other than that, you know, could have been at swimming. Who knows? So, all right. But I definitely know that what was about to happen was going to change my life. I just didn't realize it at the moment. And you know what? There's things happening. There's probably things developing right now that can completely alter your life and my life, and we don't even know it right now. Because we don't even know what's going to happen. It could be something good. It could be something tragic, getting ready to happen at any moment. We do not know what's happening. I don't even know if I'll be alive tomorrow to be at church. But I know this, that whatever is happening, it's going to change your life. So all we can do, we can't worry about it. Can't be filled with anxiety about tomorrow because it's not here yet. Can't really focus on the things of the past. We got right now. Make the most of it. And that's probably the lesson I have in regards to this. All right. Everyone have a great day. You can email me your memories, your thoughts, your reflection, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Everyone have a great day. God bless.